say Valentine's Day is about love, about roses, about promises, about choosing someone and being chosen back. But sometimes the most dangerous love is the one that looks perfect from the outside. This is not a story about heartbreak. It's a story about erosion, about how you can disappear inside something that calls itself love. And the night you finally see it clearly is the night everything changes. Welcome back to Narratrix of Nightmares, beloved family, where not every love story ends in romance. Some end in recognition. Everyone said we were perfect. Not in the loud way, not in the Instagram sunset way. In the quiet way that makes people nod like they've just witnessed a small miracle. He'd put his hand on my back when we walked into a room, like he was guiding me, and I mistook that for care. He'd look at me with that calm, unblinking certainty and say things like, "Say you're mine." And I did. God, I did. Because at first it felt like belonging, like being chosen, like finally not having to float. I didn't realize the way he said it wasn't a vow. It was a claim. The first Valentine's Day wasn't even dramatic. No huge bouquet, no expensive restaurant. Just a card, a cheap box of chocolates, and him saying something that sounded oddly scripted. I've never felt like this. You're different. You're the only person who really gets me. I remember my body responding like a dog hearing its name. Because that sentence, "You get me," is a powerful spell when you've spent years getting yourself through things alone. And I was good alone. I was the type of woman people leaned on, the one who could hold everyone else's feelings without dropping them. I didn't notice at first how quickly he started leaning and how little he ever held back for me. When we argued, he didn't argue like someone trying to understand. He argued like someone trying to win. Not a conversation, a courtroom. Not what happened, more like prove I'm wrong. And if I didn't have the perfect words, if I hesitated, if I breathed too loudly, "You're overreacting." A small phrase, a tiny needle, but it always landed in the same place. And I always did the same thing. I shrank. I apologized. I tried again with nicer words, softer words, better words. I thought that was love. I didn't know I was training myself to become quiet enough to keep him comfortable. It happened slowly, not like a slap, more like a room filling with gas while you keep lighting candles. I stopped sleeping properly first. Not because I was scared of him physically, no. It was worse than that. I was scared of the next version of him. The one that arrived when I didn't perform correctly. The one that came out when I asked for something ordinary, human, small. Understanding, repair, accountability. Things that should be basic. But with him, it was like asking him to pick up a live wire. He'd go cold, then try to be clever, then cruel. He'd take my words and twist them. "So you're saying I'm a bad person. So you want to control me. So you're blaming me for your feelings." And a lot of the time it worked. because it distracted me from what I actually felt, from what was actually going on. And it forced me to constantly defend what I meant. Hours, late nights, circular, exhausting. Like being accused by someone who's already decided you're guilty. I was made to feel like I had to think, really think about what I wanted to say and how before I said it, even though I wasn't being unreasonable. I'd lie in bed beside him, eyes open, heart thudding, thinking, don't use that word, he'll twist it. Don't sound emotional, he'll call you unstable. Don't sound calm, he'll call you manipulative. My mind became a courtroom too, and the judge was always him. One night, I woke up to find he was watching me, not staring lovingly, not with concern, just looking, as if I was a television he'd paused. You talk in your sleep. My throat went dry. What do I say? He smiled like he'd been waiting for the question. The truth. That was the first time I felt it properly, the shape of the fear. Not the fear of being hit, the fear of being known by someone who didn't care about you, only about what knowing gave them access to. After that, my anxiety didn't feel like an emotion. It felt like a system, a security alarm that never turned off. There was a mirror in my hallway that I'd had for years. A plain mirror, nothing special. One day, I walked past it and stopped because my reflection looked delayed. Not in a cartoon way, not obviously, just a fraction. Like a video lag. I lifted my hand, my reflection lifted hers a beat later. I blinked, she blinked a beat later. I stood there, staring at myself, and felt the strangest thought pass through me. That isn't me. I laughed nervously because it was ridiculous, but the laughter didn't settle my body. It crawled down my spine and sat there, cold. That night, he brought up something I'd never told him. Something small, something private, something I'd thought once while alone. He said it casually, like he was reading from a shopping list. And my blood went quiet. How do you know that? He didn't hesitate. I know you. And he said it the way someone says, I own you. I began to notice things then. The way he spoke in borrowed lines. The way his deep thoughts sounded suspiciously like other people's deep thoughts. The way he'd repeat phrases he'd clearly absorbed from somewhere else, like he was building himself out of quotations. At first, I thought it was odd. Then I realized something sharper. He didn't have an inner world. He had a collection. And I was one of the things he was collecting. People talk about abuse like it's always obvious. It isn't. Sometimes it's small, like the way he'd ignore you after you cried, but be charming to a stranger 5 minutes later. Sometimes it's the way he'd forget something important to you, but remember every tiny detail about what annoyed him. Sometimes it's the way you stop telling your friends things, because you can't bear the look on their faces when they say, "Why are you putting up with this?" Because you don't even know how to explain it. How do you explain being harmed by someone who keeps insisting he loves you? He never called me names. He didn't need to. He did something more efficient. He used descriptives instead. Crazy, overreactive, needy, dramatic, too much, unreasonable. All projections, of course. And the worst part, sometimes I believed him. He had this habit of smiling when I was upset. Not a happy smile, not a comforting one. A small, secret smile. Like my pain proved something. Like it reassured him that he had the power to reach into me and rearrange my insides. He mistook cruelty for strength, and for a while, I mistook endurance for love. The second Valentine's Day was heavier. He gave me a necklace, delicate, pretty, a little heart charm. And I remember thinking, this is supposed to make me forget. Because we'd been fighting, not loudly, not publicly, privately. In that strange way where the relationship looks fine from the outside, but inside you're constantly being corrected, shaped. I put on the necklace. He watched my throat as the charm settled against my skin. It suits you, like it belongs there. My stomach tightened. Yeah, it's lovely. He leaned closer. Say it. I froze. The air changed. Say what? He smiled. That same secret smile. Say you're mine. And suddenly I saw it. Not as romance, as ritual, as training, as something he needed to hear to keep his own emptiness from roaring. My mouth went dry, and in the silence between us, I heard my own heart, not pounding with love, pounding with recognition. This is the part where women disappear. This is the part where you say the line, where you soothe the man, where you make him feel big enough not to punish you. I could feel the old reflex in me, the one that wanted safety so badly it would sacrifice dignity for it. But something in me was done. Not angry, just done. No. He blinked, just once. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look momentarily empty, like a mask slipping. Then his face rearranged itself into something smooth. Don't be dramatic. I'm not. His eyes sharpened. The room felt smaller. After everything I've done for you, there it was, the invoice. Love to him wasn't a gift. It was a transaction, and I was overdue. Like other nights, that night I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in the dark listening to his breathing. I noticed something I'd never noticed before. His breathing wasn't relaxed. It was measured, like someone pretending to sleep. I turned my head slightly and I swear to God, his eyes were open, just barely, watching me, not moving, not blinking, like he was waiting for something to crack. My throat filled with that metallic taste of panic. I sat up slowly, quietly, like I didn't want to disturb a predator. And as I moved, the necklace charm slid against my skin. A tiny sound, a tiny clink. His voice came instantly from the dark. "Where are you going?" My stomach dropped. "Just the bathroom." Silence. Then, "Don't start." I stood there, still, in the dark, and something inside me finally said clearly, "This is not love." It was like a curtain being pulled back, and behind it wasn't a monster. It was something more pathetic, and therefore more dangerous. A man terrified of being nothing, so he needed someone else to become smaller. The next morning, I caught my reflection again, that hallway mirror. I looked tired, grey, like my face had been washed too many times. But it wasn't just fatigue, it was absence, like parts of me had been quietly removed. I leaned closer to the glass, and my reflection didn't lean with me. She stayed still, her eyes fixed on mine, unblinking. Then her mouth moved, not matching my mouth, not copying, speaking. "You're not safe here." My breath hitched, my hands went cold. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the reflection snapped into normality, moving when I moved, blinking when I blinked. I told myself it was sleep deprivation, anxiety, stress, anything but what I felt. That my body knew the truth before my mind could bear it. The final argument wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was quieter than that. It happened over something small, something so stupid that later I couldn't even remember what it was. But I remember what he did. He started speaking to me like I was a child, like my feelings were embarrassing, like my needs were inconvenient. "You're too emotional." I stared at him, and for the first time I didn't scramble to defend myself. I didn't try to explain, I didn't try to soften. I just watched him, watched how he needed me to react, watched how he fed off the chaos. And I said something that felt like stepping off a cliff. "You don't actually care about me." His face changed, not to sadness, not to hurt, to anger, because I'd named it. And naming it is the most dangerous thing you can do to someone who survives on distortion. "After everything I've done, this is how you repay me." There it was again. Transaction, invoice, debt. And in that moment I realized he didn't want love. He wanted access. He wanted a woman-shaped mirror that reflected him as powerful. And my suffering was proof that it was working. I felt something rise in me, not rage. Something cleaner, something older. A self. The me I'd lost. And she said without shaking, "I'm not doing this anymore." He laughed. Not because it was funny, because he thought it was impossible. "You'll come back." And I knew he believed that. Because until then, I always had. Leaving wasn't a single moment. It was a series of small refusals. I stopped explaining. I stopped apologizing. I stopped negotiating reality. When he tried to pull me back into the courtroom, I didn't enter. When he baited me with accusations, I didn't bite. When he tried to punish me with silence, I let the silence sit there, and I listened to myself inside it. I began sleeping again, not perfectly, not immediately, but there were nights where I could feel my nervous system unclench, like a fist opening slowly after years. My anxiety didn't vanish, it changed shape. It became grief, because I finally saw how much of me I'd handed over, piece by piece, to keep the peace. I looked at my life and realized how small it had become, how careful, how edited, how censored. And I felt a rage then, yes, but underneath it was something else. A sorrow so deep it was almost holy. Sorrow for the woman who thought love meant endurance. Sorrow for the nights I lay awake beside him, wondering what was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me. I was having a normal reaction to being slowly erased. After I left, he didn't reach out the way people do when they've lost something real. No apology, no reflection, no curiosity, no grief. Instead, he sent an email. Not to talk, not to repair, to perform. Attached was a photo. A woman I'd never met. Curated to signal one thing and one thing only. Look what I can get. Look how replaceable you are. It was almost sweet in a tragic way, because nothing screams powerless like needing an audience for your rejection. I remember staring at the image and waiting for the sting, the jealousy, the doubt, the familiar twist of maybe I wasn't enough, but it didn't come. What came instead was confirmation, because suddenly I could see it. The panic behind the posturing, the desperation behind the display. This wasn't confidence. This was a boy knocking over a chessboard and announcing he'd won. He needed me to see it, needed me to feel replaced, needed to prove to himself, not to me, that he still had access to women, bodies, validation. Because without me absorbing his chaos, there was nothing left to feed on. And that's when I understood something final. A man who is powerful doesn't need to advertise his desirability. A man who is whole doesn't use another woman as a prop. And a man who truly didn't care wouldn't still be performing for the woman who walked away. That email wasn't rejection. It was a tantrum in a suit. A last clumsy attempt to feel tall by standing on someone else's body. And in that moment, any lingering doubt evaporated. Not because he hurt me, but because he showed me how small he was when he thought no one was watching. On Valentine's Day, a year later, I found the necklace. That little heart charm. It was in a drawer, tangled in old receipts and hair ties, like it never belonged anywhere important. I held it up to the light, and I realized something. It had never been a gift. It was a collar with better branding. I walked to the hallway mirror. I stood in front of it. My reflection looked back, steady this time. No delay, no lag. No stranger in my eyes. I unclasped the necklace and let it fall into the sink. It made that same tiny clink. And for a second, I expected to hear his voice out of nowhere from the dark. Where are you going? Don't start. The room was quiet. Only my breathing. Only my heartbeat. Only the sound of a woman existing without permission. I leaned closer to the mirror, and I spoke, not to him, but to the part of me that had lived in fear. We're not going back. My reflection smiled, not his secret smile, not a predator smile, a real one, a human one. Then I said the last thing I ever needed to say about him. He mistook cruelty for power. He mistook my empathy for weakness. He mistook my endurance for consent. And he mistook my love for something he could own. But love is not ownership. Love is not a courtroom. Love is not a debt. Love does not require you to disappear. Not every Valentine is a romance. Some are a funeral. And some are a resurrection. Because the most terrifying thing a man like that can witness is a woman who remembers who she is and walks away anyway. I used to think leaving meant losing. Losing love, losing certainty, losing safety. What I actually lost was confusion. I lost the insomnia that came from anticipating punishment. I lost the anxiety of being constantly evaluated. I lost the version of myself that believed love required endurance. I didn't walk away because I hated him. I walked away because I recognized myself again and realized how much I'd been disappearing to keep him comfortable. He mistook cruelty for strength. He mistook emotional distance for power. He mistook my empathy for something he could exploit. And he mistook rejection for something that required performance. Men who are powerful don't need to convince you they are. I stand by that, because real power doesn't posture, it doesn't punish, it doesn't need an audience. Real power is this: leaving without theatrics, refusing to be baited, choosing silence, not because you're afraid to speak, but because there's nothing left to say. I didn't lose him. I lost the version of myself that believed love should hurt. And I am not going back for her. And that brings us, dear listeners, not to the end, but to a new beginning. Because not every Valentine is a romance. Some are a funeral, some are a mirror, and some are the moment you realize you were never the one who was small. If you've ever confused intensity with love, if you've ever rehearsed your words before speaking them, if you've ever felt yourself shrinking to keep someone comfortable, you are not alone, and you are not difficult. You are responding to something real. Men who are powerful don't need to convince you they are, and love that requires you to disappear is not love, it's performance. And the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the stage.